Welcome, everyone, to the Modern Sage podcast. I'm Leah Guy, your host. This is a place that you can come to be inspired and informed of how to live a life that you love. We discuss many topics here, from healing of the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and energetic. And today we have a fantastic guest, so I'm very excited to introduce you to. Before we get to that, a few reminders that you can watch these podcasts on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Leah Guy. Also, follow me on social media at Leah Guy Live on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and find the latest promos and information. My courses, workshops, retreats, and more are on my website, leahguy.com. I'd love to connect with you any way possible. Now, today we are talking to a very prominent person in the healing world, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. Dr. Bradley Nelson, he's a veteran holistic physician, and he's the author of the best-selling book, The Emotion Code, and a new book coming soon, which we'll dive into in just a moment. So, Dr. Brad, I am so happy to have you here. Thank you for your work in your life and for being here with us today.
Thank you, Leah. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I have a little confession, Dr. Brad.
Mhm.
So since I met you years ago, and I subscribed to your work, so I've been following you over the years. As you know, or you may or may not know, but I do intuitive healing work and energetic work, and I've been working with clients for years. And one time, probably about 3 years ago, I want to say now, maybe four, I had a client who was not so trusting of the intuitive process. Yeah, and so I showed her the chart that goes with your emotion code book, which is a brilliant chart, and worked with her with that to confirm kind of what we were dealing with. And I haven't taken your trainings. I know you have a lot of people, tens of thousands of people who are certified to do the work as it's per emotion code. But I found it helpful in that instance, and I find it a helpful tool in general. And so I want to thank you personally, because even though I'm not certified with your work, I've used it.
Hey, that's fine. No worries.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, Dr. Brad, tell the audience where you are in your work, how you've come to do what you do, and what you do in your healing work.
Well, the first book that I wrote was in 2007. I practiced as a holistic chiropractic physician for around 20 years, give or take, in one form or another. And what I found was that all of my patients had something in common, no matter how young or old they were, no matter what kind of problems they were dealing with, whether it was some kind of physical pain, neck pain, migraine, headaches, back pain, knee pain, or whether they were dealing with other problems like a depression or anxiety, or eating disorders, or self-sabotage, or if they were dealing with some kind of a named disease process, if they were dealing with infertility, for example, or asthma, or digestive problems, or fibromyalgia, or chronic fatigue. What I found was that all of these people had something in common, and I came to call that their emotional baggage. And emotional baggage is really just the energy of the emotions that we've experienced that we have not been able to really process. And those energies stay with us, and then they are the underlying cause of all these different kinds of problems, and they're a contributing factor in every disease process that I've seen now in about 34 years of doing this work. And so I wrote the Emotion Code book. It came out in 2007. We republished it as a hardcover book in 2019 with St. Martin's Press. And basically, I just felt like, well, I knew that this work had to go out to the world, because I was in my practice seeing dramatic things happening with my patients, dramatic recovery, and people getting well from all kinds of things in fairly short order. And I knew this really had to go out to the world. So the Emotion Code is, it's a book by that name. It's also this method that enables really anyone without any kind of previous training or any knowledge of anatomy or energy medicine or anything at all to be able to pick this up and take back their, what I like to call their healing birthright. That I think everybody comes into this world with this healing birthright, this ability to help and heal others and help themselves, but we Normally we don't pay any attention to that. We lost track of that somewhere. We gave that up to Western medicine a long time ago. And so most of us are conditioned to think that healing is something that takes a lifetime of effort, and you have to have a degree or maybe multiple degrees and all kinds of things to do. And it's not the truth. The truth is that we're all capable of healing. The emotion code is a really simple way to give people back that ability.
Mm.
And because it's imbalances within us that cause our physical and mental and emotional problems. And because the number one kind of imbalance that exists in our bodies is our emotional baggage, if you find a simple way to get rid of that baggage, like the emotion code, you can help all kinds of things to improve. And it's actually really simple to do, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I love it. And I want to get into it a little bit in more depth in just a moment. But so people listening that may not be familiar often associate chiropractic with just bone cracking and adjustments and alignment and this kind of thing. And
Sure.
so for you to um, kind of delve deeper into the emotional aspects of how it's affecting the body, what took you there?
Well, I was a computer programmer before I became a chiropractor. Back in the early 1980s, I had a business called the Computer Tutor, which I
Mm,
thought was clever.
yeah.
Back, right, back in the early days, when people would buy an Apple II or they'd buy an IBM PC for their business, and they wouldn't know what to do with it because there was no software that existed at the time. And so I would write the software for people so that they could use this computer for their business and so on. So I learned a lot about computer programming and logic, and then it was really an answer to prayer, literally, to go into the healing arts. And I had always wanted to do that since I was healed of kidney disease when I was 13 years old from some old time osteopathic doctors and holistic doctors back then, a long time ago. And so, but I kind of lost track of that when I discovered computers in 1980. And so when I got into practice, there were two things really that made it an enormous difference. One thing was that I had this habit of of prayer. It was before I'd go to work on someone, I would just take a moment and just ask for help from up above, from God or source energy, whatever you want to call it, to help me with that person. And it was a totally private, totally personal habit. Nobody ever knew that I was saying a short, quick prayer for them. I was just trying to connect with the higher power to get that help,
Right.
because it was the higher power that had gotten me into this fix, right?
Yeah.
So here I am trying to help people. So I thought, well, maybe I can get some help, and I did. And I'll tell you something. It was it was really an amazing thing, Leah. There were times when people would come in to see me. I didn't know how to approach their problem. I didn't know how to help them, and when I would ask for help for that particular person, sometimes information that I needed would just flood in like an avalanche of understanding. And that didn't happen very often. And sometimes it was a totally different way of looking at things than what I'd ever imagined or considered before. And so that was a key. The other thing was this computer background that I had helped me to understand that the human body is really a computer, and the subconscious mind in particular is this incredibly powerful computer that remembers everything we've ever done, every face you've ever seen in a crowd, everything you've ever eaten or tasted or touched or smelled is all in there in that subconscious mind. And so we can ask questions, we can direct questions to the subconscious mind, the internal computer, and we can get answers. And so everything that I have done over all these years, from the time that I was in practice until now, teaching worldwide, is based on that fundamental principle that within each person is the absolute perfect understanding and knowledge of what's really wrong with them and why they're manifesting depression or anxiety or phobias or panic attacks, or whether they've got some kind of disease process or whatever it is. The subconscious knows the answer, and or answers. And so that's the emotion code is based on that. The body code is a system that we sell, where you can find really any kind of imbalance going on in the body. That's a book also that's coming out in February. So So that's basically it. I mean, these bodies of ours are incredibly simple. Uh, they're incredibly complex, but it's also very simple because you can simply ask questions and get answers. And I can remember sitting in class and at chiropractic school, and our instructor for neurology, his name was Dr. Dale Nansell. He would say, he'd talk about the brain. He would say, the brain is the most amazing computer in the known universe. And as a former computer programmer, I'd be sitting there thinking, wow, it's a computer. Gee, will we ever be able to tap into it and actually get answers from it? And that's exactly what this is.
Yeah, that's amazing. So did you also study kinesiology or have a fondness for kinesiology and that communication with the body that way? Or was that you
Not so much when I was in school. It was really more when I got out of school. I worked for a guy in Kalispell, Montana,
Mhm.
who he's an old man now in a nursing home, but at the time he was very vibrant. He was an amazing healer, and I saw just some incredible things happen with me. And it was all through muscle testing, and we use muscle testing to get answers from the subconscious mind. You
Yeah.
can also use any kind of a dowsing device, like you can use a pendulum or any of those instruments too, because the most sensitive instrument in the world is the body itself. And so yeah, it's really been a fun ride and an amazing thing. I mean, I really do feel like I'm on a mission from from that higher power to bring this knowledge into the world of how there is so much that we can do to help ourselves. I mean, people themselves all over the world are healing their family members and their friends of things like long-standing depression and suicidal tendencies and even physical problems. And it's very exciting, very gratifying to me that this is happening. And I feel like, it doesn't really have anything to do with me except that I'm the person that somehow, was chosen, I guess, to bring this into the world, probably because I'm kind of a workaholic.
Yeah. Well, but your background makes sense with it too. The moment you said you were a computer programmer, I said, "Oh, okay, I got it." Well, for those listening, and the emotion code, the book is what we're talking about, and also the work that goes along with it. And just like the principles you were speaking of about the body, the practice itself, in and of itself, is relatively easy as it is to understand the chart. And that's what I love about it when I share it with clients or other people in the work. Um, and for those listening, if you're unfamiliar with it, one, I urge you to get the book, The Emotion Code. But in essence, it's a chart that lists the body organs and where emotion and energy is living, stored, and the relative emotion that is you can say it better than me, but I would say that is unresolved or unprocessed, that is stored in that body area. So it gives us really direct information about not only just where to look, but to understand the functioning in the system and how it's, always kind of navigating with this deep emotional baggage, as you say, in it. So if you want to expound on that, please do.
Sure, absolutely. Well, if you think about it, uh, we go through emotional experiences all the time. It's emotions that really give color to our lives. I mean, imagine living in a world where no emotions could be experienced.
Mm,
You wouldn't have any happiness, you wouldn't have any sadness, you wouldn't have any excitement or any depression. I mean, it would just be a flat line, right? It
yeah,
wouldn't be worth living,
right.
really.
No.
So those emotions give us color, but sometimes we experience things that we'd rather not experience. And sometimes we experience those intense negative emotions. Well, anytime you experience an emotion, you go through what we call an emotional process or an emotional loop. Now, so think about it this way. Let's say that something happens and you start to feel an emotion. Well, what we believe, and this is what the ancient Chinese doctors believe, that the organs and glands in the body produce the frequencies of the emotions. And so we experience that frequency as the emotion itself. We start to feel that emotion. And so it's like we start this little loop.
Hmm.
We feel the thoughts that go along, the physical feelings. We think the thoughts that go along with that emotion. And then typically what happens is as we're going through this little loop, we acknowledge the emotion and then we allow it to kind of dissipate and move on. And so that little loop gets closed, that emotional experience is done and gone. Sometimes, though, what happens is we start into that emotional loop, and there are two kinds of circumstances that can cause the emotional loop to become interrupted. Sometimes what happens is we become very involved with the emotion and we decide that not only are we going to feel a little bit resentful, for example, we decide, yeah, we're really going to get resentful. Or instead of just feeling a little bit of anger, we decide we're going to get really angry. And so we do. So we can choose to enhance that frequency because all the emotions are different vibrations and different frequencies. And if we decide to become really involved with that emotion and kind of fly off the handle or just become really intense, that will break that loop so that the energy of the emotion, instead of allowing it to be dissipated normally, we enhance it too much. And so the loop gets stuck. And so the energy of the emotion then remains behind in the body. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, total. Yeah.
So the other way that we create emotional baggage is, let's say, for example, that your father was a rageaholic when you were a kid, maybe. It's just one example. And you decide that the emotion of anger is a really bad emotion. You never want to go there ever. And you're never going to allow yourself to feel that emotion ever again. So now let's say that in your life something happens where somebody wrongs you in some way and you could justifiably feel an emotion of anger and it starts to come up for you, but you've made a decision to never allow that. And so you stuff that emotion. That also breaks the loop so that that emotion is now stuck in the body. And so a trapped emotion is like a little ball of energy from about the size of a baseball to the size of a softball. And most of us are totally inhabited with these energies. They can lodge anywhere in the body. And the chart of emotions just provides a really simple, easy way to identify the emotion because the subconscious mind knows exactly what emotional baggage you have, where those energies are in the body, what they're doing to you, how long you've had them, what the circumstances were. The subconscious knows all of it. And so, so there's a very simple process in the emotion code to find these emotions and identify these and release these.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do, really fun things and really sometimes really amazing things can happen. On our website, by the way, our website is discoverhealing.com. I'm going to go there really quickly and just look under articles and look at, I'm going to click on testimonials. So here's a fun one. These are just, we put a new one up every day. We have thousands, we have over 10,000 of these, but anyway, let's see here. Let me see if I can see a good one here. Here's a good one. I've been a seeker of healing since I was 12. This is from a woman named Sherry Hellickson in Utah. Says, having gone through childhood trauma, I decided I wanted to become a therapist. After going through classes and worked with several therapists myself, I realized the problem. I knew what had happened, but no one could help me to get rid of this pain, right? I knew I needed to eliminate these emotions in order to heal emotionally and physically, but how? I had severe scoliosis in all sections of my spine. Besides other health issues such as fibromyalgia, the scoliosis was severely limiting my physical ability as I aged to the degree that it was difficult to walk. I went to many doctors and a specialist, but I was told I would end up in a wheelchair. Then a chiropractor friend told me about the emotion code. It made sense, and I became certified and then went on to become body code certified. My spine is straightened to the degree that it was when I was in my 20s. I'm 59 now. The difference is visibly evident, but it's how I feel that's really changed me. I'm not plagued by the past. I feel free, and my body is free and healthier than it's been for decades,
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, so let's talk about this is right in my wheelhouse. So I could talk to you all day, but I want to try to think of the questions that the audience has, of course. And so I want to talk about when we experience an uncomfortable emotion, and whether we have resistance to it or whether we amplify it, and let's say we do the process and then eventually release or clear free the emotion, we're
Uh-huh.
going to have another experience in life that will elicit a similar kind of emotion. So, what about for those who have a tendency to repeat or even have an addiction to, I talk about emotional addiction a lot, addiction to a certain feeling or vibration that kind of keeps the activation happening, or that loop as you speak of it broken, where we're constantly allowing the trigger or the feeling or the resistance or what have you. What do we do there?
Sure. Well, when you find the trapped emotion and you release it, what it does is, well, first of all, what it doesn't do is it doesn't erase any memory of what
Hmm.
happened. But what it does do is it takes the charge out of it. A perfect example of this that just comes to my mind is a woman that came in to see me for fibromyalgia. And this is back when I was in practice and I was working with her, and we found that she had a trapped emotion. She was about, I don't know, 48 or 50 at the time. This trapped emotion showed up when I was working with her, and the emotion was resentment. And one of the things that you can do is you can, through muscle testing, you can actually trace an emotion back to when it occurred. And this had occurred when she was 18 years old. She was in high school, and she said, "Oh yeah," she said, "I know exactly what that's about." And I said, "Oh really? What was it about?" She said, "Well," she said, "there was this cheerleader that she just really resented." And she said, after all these years, she didn't even really remember why she resented her, but she did. And she said the weird thing was that whenever that girl's name came up, I mean, she hadn't been in school for 30 years
Yeah.
or more. But she said whenever that girl's name would come up in conversation, she could feel this resentment welling up inside of her for that girl. And so, sure enough, it was a trapped emotion. It was a resentment. We released it, and all of that probably took about a minute or maybe two. It's fast. It's a fast process. And so she came back in a couple of days later and she said, she said, last night I was talking with a friend of mine from high school. That girl's name came up. And for the first time in all of these years, she said, I felt nothing. The resentment didn't well up inside of me. I remembered her, and I remembered that I used to have resentment for her, but now it's gone. And so when you release the emotional energy,
Hmm.
what happens is it takes the charge out of that event or that person that maybe abused you, or that ex that you're trying to get over, or whatever it is. And so again, it doesn't delete the memories, but it takes the charge out of it. And so I can't tell you how many times when I was in practice that people would say to me, gee, when we'd find a trapped emotion about some event, they'd say, wow, I spent years in therapy for that. I thought I dealt with all that.
Yeah.
Well, when you spend years in therapy or time in therapy, what you're doing is you're dealing with it mentally, but you're not getting rid of that trapped emotional energy, that ball of energy that is lodged in the body.
Right.
And what I find is that when we identify that energy and we release that energy, then all kinds of things shift for people.
Hmm.
And one of the beautiful things about this work is that uh, it opens the way and clears the way for people to forgive other people, because we all, most of the time, I think most people have someone in their life that they really need to forgive, even if it's only themselves, right? And the natural human tendency is to think that, okay, that person hurt me. I'm never going to forgive them, and that's going to hurt them. But no, it just hurts you. Um, there was a man, Lewis Smedes, an author, said, forgiveness is like setting the prisoner free only to find out that the prisoner was you,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, what about emotions that we experience, such as grief, that may require a process or time, or, depending on the person, their circumstances, their belief system, and so forth? What about those kinds of emotions that someone's experiencing that it's heavy, maybe not toxic, maybe not, uh, you know, unbearable. Maybe it hasn't even set in the body yet, but it's just difficult. What do you say about that?
Right. Well, there are a couple things. First of all, um, let's say that you experience something. Maybe someone passes away, someone close to you, and you're experiencing this emotion of grief. Well, it may be more intense for you than the next person because maybe you already have some emotional energy of grief that's already trapped in your body.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, then you'll be more likely to have a more intense experience with the grief that's going on now. And the way I like to think about it is if you think of your body as being like a glass, and the emotional baggage that you're holding is like water in the glass, how full is your glass? And so I think what happened with when COVID began, uh, a lot of people had a really hard time dealing with it because their glass was already full of emotional baggage. And
Right.
so trying to add more stress to that was really difficult, and it was just overflowing. On the other hand, when you start to remove emotional baggage, it's like pouring water out of the glass. So you become much more able to deal with life. You become able to, uh, I think, experience joy really just in existing when you get rid of enough of that baggage. People tell us, and I've told us for years, that when they get rid of enough emotional baggage, it feels like they're stepping out of this old suit they've been wearing into this new state of being that's much closer to who they really were when they started out.
Mhm.
And that's a key factor, I think, in this is that's what this is about. Really, it's about. I mean, we're not our baggage, but our baggage can tend to run our lives in a lot of cases. I mean, there are a lot of people who continually choose the wrong kind of mate, right?
Mhm.
That maybe is abusive, hurtful to them. A lot of people have trouble because they're blocked financially, they're blocked from relationships, they're blocked from health, and emotional baggage is the single biggest cause of those blockages. So getting rid of it is easy, and it can be done. I mean, you can do it yourself, and so it can basically be free. You might need to buy the book, but
Yeah.
or we have a network of practitioners all over the world. We just hit 10,000 practitioners about 3 weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, that's great. Well,
Mm.
what I hear you saying, to use your language again, is that we're making space on the hard drive, right? We're clearing out stuff and making space on the hard drive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love speaking to, well, I love speaking to you and other healers as well. I think many of us have a similar drive, of helping and supporting, and the goals are the same, much like in spirituality. We all use different words to kind of get to the same end result. But and so I recognize in my work, I started with the pendulum, and now it's mostly all intuitive. And like I said, I'll show resources when needed and so forth. But that the understanding of our emotional history, and that many people are just kind of replaying their stories, and getting re-triggered, re-traumatized, even at therapy, and I think therapy is great for when
Oh
we
yeah,
need it, right? But
absolutely.
yeah, it's one thing to understand things cognitively, and it's another thing to have a feeling state and an energetic state about it. So I love how simple, straightforward your work is. So tell us about the body code. You said a new book coming in February.
Right. Well, yes. So the the body code, what it's about really is so let me back up. When I was in practice, if you remember, I was a computer programmer before I became a doctor. So I always have a computer with me there as I'm working in my practice, and I'm also talking to the subconscious minds. I'm working with the computer mind, the subconscious mind of each patient, trying to find out what's really going on with them, what the real underlying problems are. And as I'm finding new things, I'm trying to organize those using my computer. And as time went on, I created this whole knowledge base of all of the energetic imbalances, all the problems that can happen to people. And so what I found is that there are really 6 different kinds of imbalances that people suffer from. And those can include things like, well, like emotional baggage, like we've been talking about.
Mhm.
They can include things like infection, parasites, viruses, bacteria, fungal problems. Those organisms can set up housekeeping in the body, and that can cause trouble. Another category is misalignments. You can have misalignments of any tissue in the body, and that can cause trouble. Another category is nutrition and lifestyle. So maybe you need a certain vitamin or mineral to be able to be healthy. Maybe you need a certain essential oil. Maybe you need more water, more sleep. Maybe you have some kind of a toxin. That's another category. Maybe you have some trouble from your teeth. Maybe you had fillings, and so you've got a burden from the mercury. Maybe you were bitten by a spider or something 2 years ago, and the venom's still in the body. Maybe you got vaccinated, or maybe you've got some kind of drug toxicity, or heavy metals, or some kind of environmental toxin. There's another category that's what we call circuits or systems, and on an organ and gland level, you might have imbalances in organs or glands that are causing trouble in other areas. Maybe you've got an acupuncture meridian problem, or a chakra problem, or maybe you've got some kind of a disconnection going on between your spirit and your physical body. And so these are really 6 different areas. The body code itself, eventually it turned out to be about 1,000 different nodes in this constellation of things that could go wrong. And so it's an app now that you can buy, the Body Code app. It's available on the App Store and Google Play, but and also on our website at Discover Healing. But the beauty of it is, it basically gives anyone with a little bit of training the ability to tap into the subconscious mind and find out what's really going on in the body in really any area. And so, so that's what the body code is. So, so our publisher a couple of years ago asked us if we would write a book about the body code, and they wanted it to be a little bit of a how-to as well, kind of like the emotion code. I mean, the emotion code, you can learn the whole method just from the book, and the body code was a little bit of a problem because it's there's so much information. I mean, you download it, it's half of a gigabyte on your phone. But to print all that information out the book would be about this thick.
Yeah.
So what we did is we kind of took the highlights from the body code, the most common imbalances that people find. We took those out and created a book out of it. So it explains how it works. And once again, we're relying on the subconscious mind that knows exactly what's wrong. And we're allowing it to tell us what the body really needs. And it's really astounding how well it works. There's never really been a system like this before.
Mm.
And so it's patented, and we're excited to have the book come out in February.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Well, Dr. Bright, I'd like to ask a couple of personal questions here, if you don't mind. And since you're the emotion code doctor, let me ask, what is one of the more challenging emotions for you to process?
For me personally,
Yeah, historically or now.
well, I'll tell you what. The interesting thing for me, I think that the emotional energy that was having the biggest effect on me was actually something that was inherited. And so in the Emotion Code book, we talk about and we teach you how to find and remove emotional energy that was passed to you at conception from mom or dad, that they might have received at conception from their mom or dad. And these can go back for generations. And I'll tell you the story. It's one of the really fun aspects of the Emotion Code to find and remove inherited baggage. And so a lot of us have inherited emotional baggage that is interfering with our ability to do things. Anyway, this was 2 years after the Emotion Code book came out, so it would have been in 2009. I asked my daughter, Natalie, to work on me one day, and I was talking to her on the phone, and she said she'd work on me. So I hung up the phone with her. And she's in Seattle and I'm down in southwestern Utah where I live. And so she starts working on me, and right away she finds, and by the way, you can do this remotely. We teach you how to do that in the book. And we have thousands of practitioners, like I said, that most of the patients they work with or clients are in other countries and others, on the other side of the planet and so on. It's very easy to do and it's very concrete, works very well. So this can be done either live and in person or at a distance. And so she's working on me at a distance. And right away, the first thing she finds is that I have this inherited trapped emotion, and the emotion is hopelessness. And I got it, she finds, from my father, and he got it from his mother. And she's muscle testing to get these answers, right? She's tuned into my subconscious mind through those quantum physics principles like quantum tunneling and non-locality and entanglement. And so anyway, she finds that I got this at birth, or at conception rather, from my dad. He got it when he was conceived from his mom, and she keeps tracing it back, and it goes back 22 generations.
Wow.
Yeah, in the mother's line. And so this originated with my 21st great grandmother, 22 generations back from me. And when my daughter arrives at that point of origin for this emotion of hopelessness, all of a sudden she can feel that there's someone standing next to her, and she knows who it is. It's the point of origin. It's this grandmother that this began with, because my daughter could feel her emotions. She could feel how desperate she was that this emotional energy be released from her posterity. It's kind of mind-blowing, right? She could also feel how overwhelmed with gratitude this woman was that this was being done. So, and by the way, my daughter received this energy from me, this hopelessness. Well, so my daughter Natalie released that trapped emotion that was 500-600 years old, and she could feel it released through all those generations and released from that grandmother, and it released from me. Now it also released from her. Well, the experience that I had, I'm sitting at my desk, she's working on me. I don't know what she's doing, we're not on the phone, but the moment that ancient emotional energy of hopelessness was released from me, I knew it. And it was the first time in my life that I was able to put my finger on this, that I had this background feeling of hopelessness that had been there every waking moment of my life. And all of a sudden it was gone. And only when it was gone could I recognize that it was even there, but it was part of my life. In fact, I'll tell you something. When I was working on the emotion code book, back in the day, if anybody would have asked me during that time, Leah, to describe in one word how the project felt without any hesitation whatsoever, I would have said, well, it feels hopeless, but I'm continuing, right? And that's exactly how it felt. That energy was so powerful.
Yeah.
And it made a huge difference for me. Well, my daughter too. My daughter is an artist. I mean, she's an absolutely amazing artist, incredibly talented, I mean, mind-blowing. But she'd never painted or drawn anything until that energy was released. And a year later, she had this art showing in Seattle, and all this art is just pouring out of it. It was incredible to see. And so I think that without having that emotional energy released, I think that she probably would have been one of those people that just takes her talent to the grave. I think she probably never painted anything. See, so for me, that I think was that made a bigger impact on me, I think, than anything else. And the funny thing about it is, I thought I'd cleared all my emotional baggage years before, but what we tell people is that you can clear 80 or 90% of your own emotional baggage yourself, by yourself, if you want to. But to get all of it, you're going to need someone else's help.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because we have lots of people that are available.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing it. Yeah. Well, another point of interest that I have is curious who for you in the world of healing, mindfulness, spirituality, or any of that has been important for you.
Well, I would say that there have been a couple of people, I think, that have been that have had a big effect on me in my life. Tony Robbins who wrote the foreword for the Emotion Code, 30, I don't even know how many years ago, probably 35 years ago. My wife and I were up late one night. We were kind of in a difficult situation, and we bought his program that was on cassettes. It was a 30-day program on unlimited power, I think, and we did that program, and that was kind of the beginning for
Mm.
us. Within 60 days, we were in our own home. We had our own practice, all with no money down. And he didn't even talk about that, but it was just that initial shift for me in my mind. Another person, not so much a healer, but my father. There were two things that happened with my dad. My dad wasn't a preacher or anything like that. He was in real estate, and he did construction and things like that. But anyway, when I was 7 years old, I was really sick with the measles, and I heard my parents talking about the plan for me, and I was going into the hospital the next day into something called an oxygen tent. And my parents had made a bed for me on the couch upstairs so I could be near their bedroom. And everyone else had gone to bed. And my parents came into the room, and my mother said to my father, she said, honey, will you kneel down with me and say a prayer for our boy so we'll be able to get well? So they did. Now, knowing my dad, I'm pretty sure this was the first time I'd ever heard him actually pray. He just wasn't really the type. But my dad starts offering this prayer for me. I think they were really worried. I was really sick. And in the middle of this prayer, I have this change that happens, starts at the top of my head, and it goes whoosh through my body. And in the space of about 1 second, I was made completely well.
Wow.
Now, yeah, I mean, to go from being really sick one moment, within about 1 second's time, to being absolutely, completely 110% healthy. I mean, it's just so bizarre. It's just kind of so, I mean, not that it's impossible, but it's kind of an impossibility. That's burned, that moment, that experience is just burned into every particle of my being.
Mm.
I remember it like it happened yesterday. And then, so that was something that happened with my dad. And that taught me that there's a higher power that we can draw upon, right? And so I just kind of filed that away. And that became a really critically important part of all the work that we do now, because we teach all of our practitioners, whatever you believe in, if you're a Muslim or a Buddhist or Zoroastrian or whatever, if you believe in a higher power, take just a moment before you start to work on somebody and ask for some help from that higher power, because then what you're doing is you're opening up that conduit, and then the angels are more able to come in and whisper answers to you. And
Right.
so anyway, so then fast forward about, let's see how old I was. I was probably about 25 or 26, I guess it was about 26. And I decided I was going to go into business. I was going to get my master's in business. And I was about 6 months away from going into that program at Brigham Young University. We went home to Montana, where I'm from, and we're sitting around with my folks at around the fire. And my dad said to me, totally out of the blue, he said, are you sure you don't want to go to chiropractic school? Seems like a great career. You've always wanted to do it. And I said, nah, I'm going this other direction. And he said, well, why don't you think about it one more time? And that statement that he made changed the whole course of my life. And as it turns out now, the course of, hundreds of thousands and millions of other people, hopefully billions before long, of other people around the world. Because he hit me at just the right moment. And it was the aftermath of that was receiving a very powerful answer to prayer that, yes, I was to go into the healing arts. And, so those are really important. I mean, there are other people, I've learned so much from so many people over the years that I've worked with. My brother, who just passed away, was an amazing mentor of mine. Dr. Stan Flagg in Montana, Deepak Chopra, whose books have had a great effect on me. So many amazing people. Rupert Sheldrake, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza. So many of these people, all my life have been just trying to figure out the truth, right? what is the truth about this particular person that is suffering, this person that's in front of me, that's got these problems, physical, mental, emotional issues. What I've always wanted to know, Leah, is what the truth is really. Why is this person manifesting these symptoms, and how can we most rapidly address the underlying causes of those symptoms? And I wrote the emotion code first because I found that the single biggest common denominator for all my patients, no matter how old or young they were, no matter what they were suffering from, was their emotional baggage. So, I mean, about 80% of the time, if you just fix the emotional baggage, you'll knock whatever symptoms a person is having right out of the park.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I wrote that book first.
That's amazing. Well, Dr. Brad, I'm so happy to have you on and to share your work with my listeners. And it's profound. And, for me, I've been in the healing arts for almost 30 years now. And I think that, as you said, the truth is the primary instigator, that, all of us helping each other with compassion, not judgment, not separating ourselves, but healing together. It's what my passion is, and I see very clearly it is yours as well. So thank you for sharing that. And so tell us one more time your website name.
Yeah, it's discoverhealing.com.
Discoverhealing.com.
And all the information is there about everything that we do. And there's a link there for practitioners. You'll see a Google map of all of our, a lot of our people all around the world. So fun stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Dr. Brad. And for all those who are listening, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week on the Modern Sage podcast.
Thank you, Leah.